Welcome to the Champions of Change podcast, where we celebrate the inspiring stories of Black male educators who are transforming schools and empowering the next generation. Each episode highlights their journeys, challenges, and triumphs as they break barriers, uplift communities, and redefine what it means to lead in education. Tune in to be inspired, informed, and motivated by the powerful voices of those making a positive impact where it matters most, in our classrooms and in our schools. And now your host, Dr. Sharon H. Porter. Welcome to another inspiring episode of Champion of Change podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sharon H. Porter, visionary of the book collaboration Champions of Change, Black male educators making a positive impact in schools. And today we have another incredible guest who is shaping the future of young minds in Nashville, Tennessee. He is Jonathan Pulliam, an assistant principal and a doctoral candidate. Mr. Pulliam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So I've shared that you are currently an assistant principal and a doctoral candidate, but we know that you just did not land here. There was a journey to get there. So if you would, please just share a little bit about your background.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everybody. Once again, my name is Jonathan Pulliam. I have been a teacher. I've been a literacy coach, and now currently very proudly serve as assistant principal with KIPP Nashville Public Schools. I'm originally from Huntsville, Alabama. Went to undergraduate at Tuskegee University, the best HBCU ever. Immediately started teaching right after undergrad. Spent some time in New York, but primarily taught in New Orleans, Louisiana. I taught third grade reading, and about 4 or 5 years ago, you could not have told me I was going to do anything else. That was my niche. That was my jam. That was my bread and butter. Have always loved engaging students around like literacy, particularly like Black and brown students that look like me. Because we know that oftentimes their experience with literacy instruction is not to par, not on grade level, not at the bar, the rigor at which like they can often perform for a lot of different reasons. A lot of teachers, be it like preparation programs, ongoing professional development, are just not taught like the science behind how students learn how to read. And so I was really blessed to be in a space where that was like what I got to focus on and get really nitty gritty around the data, around students' phonemic awareness, around their decoding, around their oral language fluency, and just got to nerd out around that in my classroom for about 4 years. Had the opportunity to step out of the classroom, became a literacy coach, literacy specialist, however you want to call it. When I first came to Nashville at my current school, loved again getting to kind of blend these two worlds that I really enjoyed, both like the data behind how students progress and learn to read, and also like the teacher development, the adult learning behind how to facilitate learning environments, professional developments for our teachers, and how to get the most amount of students to be able to read on or above grade level within a year's time. Was really excited that we saw a lot of success, especially in the K2 space. Did that for 2 years, and now this year stepped into the assistant principal seat, where just kind of ever widening that scope. So moved from living mostly in K2 to really expanding all across our entire school, K4. And it's been, every day is a little bit different. Managing adults is very different, but I feel really blessed that from like every school, every place I've been in into now, like all of that work feels really aligned, and I've gotten a chance to kind of take bits and pieces of everything to like move through each day in a way that feels productive and like worthy of both our kids and our teachers. That's my day job. Outside of work, I am also a Ph.D. student at Alabama A&M University. It's in my hometown. My parents' house is about like 10 minutes away from the campus. Whenever I need to go and beg my advisor for money, I stay overnight at my parents' house. But yeah, I am a PhD student getting a doctorate in reading and literacy with a focus in urban education and looking at the ways in which Black boys specifically experience literacy instruction and this kind of really interesting sociocultural like causal relationship between how Black boys experience literacy instruction and then the work and like the self-efficacy variables of Black male teachers that are also facilitating that work as well. A lot of my life is just spent around like how to get kids reading on grade level, and then celebrating the work of the educators that are doing it every single day.
Wow. Well, I tell you, first of all, I applaud you for being in elementary education because
Oh,
that's
it's
where
so
we don't see enough of our Black male educators.
Mhm.
As a principal, I've had no more than two or three in my building at a time.
Yep.
I was blessed to have last year an assistant principal who was a Black male educator, but we don't see enough of you guys in the elementary space. So kudos to you for that. And so, with that, what really got you started or inspired you to even become an educator?
Oh wow. I think that so when I was an undergrad, I didn't major in education. I went kind of the alternative certification route. I was an English major and just had a real zest for wanting to make a change. Didn't really know what that was going to look like. And I had this really amazing opportunity with UNCF, the United Negro College Fund, when I was a college student, where it's called the UNCF K-12 Education Fellowship, where they take college juniors that are interested in education, both from a what happens in the classroom setting to also like on a policy level, on a business level, and they basically pour into it to you for an entire year. During the summer, they send you to like placement cities, and I was placed in New Orleans, and myself and another colleague, like we were teaching in a summer program, so you got very hands-on experience around like how to be like a good teacher and like what are the classroom management strategies, how do you plan for a lesson, how do you make it culturally responsive. We were doing that during the day, and then at night and in the evenings we would go to school board meetings and we would talk to parents and other students and other educators in New Orleans around like, hey, what do you want to see, what's working, what's not working. And so it was a really impactful experience for me to get a whole like 360 view around who are all the key stakeholders that make up how a kid experiences a school K-12 and how can they all work together. And as someone who did not come from, I wasn't an education major, my mind was like blown. It was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, this is what's happening in the classroom during the day. And these are the people that are kind of behind the works making it happen, um, like in the background. And I loved getting such a 360 view of that. And when I came back as a senior that year, I was dead set on like, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a black male teacher with these kids, and it's going to be amazing. And I think like concretely, that's the experience that definitely made me want to go into the classroom. But I also think just if I even look back on how I grew up, my parents like were always reading to me and my brother and my sister. I've had a library card since I was 18 months old. And so there was always this very clear push around like we value education. Our kids are going to like go to college. They're preferably going to go to HBCU. All three of us did. And yeah, I think like my parents, I always think about them as like they were my first teachers and they were always like very, very like Jedi mind tricky around ensuring that my brother and sister and I like had the things that we needed. And then that experience as a college student really like pushed me hard into this direction.
Wow, I really love it. So, can you think of a pivotal moment in your teaching career that really reinforced your passion for literacy?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My I am someone that like always believes like in order to be sustained in this work, like shop around a little bit. If it might not be like the grade level, so like try a new grade level. It might not be the content area that you start with, try a new content area. I found my niche really in third grade literacy, but there was like a couple of grade levels before that to like see where do I fit, where can I like be sustained. And so I'm thinking about there was one student, there's always like one student that this was a student had a disability that was really high functioning, like had a ton of energy, and just could not read. Like came in straight up told me, "Hey, Mr. Pulliam, I don't know how to read. I'm in third grade. I just kind of been, making it do what it do." And I think that up to that point, I was a really good, I would say like I was a really good like literature teacher. I can get kids excited about books. We're gonna like y'all. These characters are gonna do this. There's this problem. Like let's figure it out. Like let's learn together. I was really good at getting kids excited about books. But until someone puts like the foundational literacy skills, like the cognitive things that are happening in the kid's brain in front of me, I was like, whoa, I don't know what you're talking about. What is a phoneme? What is phonemic word? What do you mean? Like they just read, they comprehend. And so I think I was a really good comprehension teacher. I'll say that. I was not up to that point like a good like foundational literacy teacher. And so I think a kid being self-aware enough to tell me, hey, Mr. Pulliam, I do not know how to read. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what we're about to do together. That was a really pivotal moment for me to then like reach out to our special education people, reach out to the folks like our specialists that were already in my building to say like, okay, little Johnny told me that he don't know how to read. What do I do? What are the things that I can like how can I support him in this classroom? Because like third grade in Louisiana is a tested subject. The student's still going to have to sit for these things at the end of the school year. How can we help? And so like that was a really pivotal moment for me just to think about like, here I am as a 20 something, like I've been to college. At that point, I was working my master's. I was grade level. I was really feeling myself at that point, and it was a moment where like I don't know what to do. So who can I ask, and how can I also do some more like learning on this end about how if a kid says they don't know how to read, what does that mean? What now knowing like what explicit skills are they missing? Is it a decoding issue? Is it a phonemic awareness issue? Is it a blending issue? Is there some like um is there some orthographic issues happening? And so getting really clear around what are the skills the kids need in order to be a fluent reader and what was this kid missing um by the end of that school year? Or what was this kid missing at the beginning of the school year?
I tell you, I can tell that you were a phenomenal literacy teacher.
That was good. I was working.
Your passion exudes
Thank
in
you.
your conversation without a doubt. So there is the phase of learning to read and that transitions to reading to
Totally.
learn, right?
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about that pivotal time in that transition?
This is my favorite question ever. Okay. So when we say kids are like learning to read, specifically in like the K2 space, we mean like in the brain, there's anywhere from like 10 to 12 different very explicit skills that are happening that you and I as like fluent readers, like we do automatically. We don't have to think about what this little symbol says or the sound that it makes. We just like automatically know it. And what research says is that like learning to read is not like our brains are like not naturally inclined to learn how to read in the way we would like eat or breathe or like seek shelter. These are skills that have to be explicitly taught. And the way our American public education system is typically set up is kids are learning to read. They're learning these like very explicit, minute skills between like kindergarten to second grade. And after second grade, most states begin like state testing in third grade, and they're tested until they test out. And so when we say that they are learning to read, they are learning these like explicit literacy skills needed to be a fluent reader, be it phonemic awareness, be it decoding, which is like blending sounds quickly, be it like orthography, so attaching like sound to symbol, we call them letters, and understanding that the English language is made of 26 letters, but it's actually made about 44 sounds. And so kids are learning to, when we say they're learning to read, they're learning all those skills like explicitly. When they start reading to learn is when they take all of those skills together and then we add comprehension over the top. So not only understanding that a sentence says the dog ran, but understand that a dog is a small furry animal. Run means to move quickly. Why is a dog running? Let's find out. So attaching like all those skills with this level of a comprehension that they are now reading to learn like more complex, be it standards, passages, texts. I don't depending like state wise. Third grade is also when they start to get some more like science and social studies exposure, and so kids are now in order to do all of that effectively, you need to be a fluent reader. So, like, to me, being a fluent reader impacts how students engage in like math instruction and science instruction and ELA instruction. And if a kid is a fluent reader by the time they're in third grade, then their like life outcomes are so much bigger than if they're not. And they're continuously playing catch up the rest of their career.
Absolutely. You know, my school district, we use really, really great reading and the science of reading.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents oftentimes they don't understand when we
Mhm.
do the nonsense words, right? That's
Nonsense words eat parents up. I just had a conversation about this
it
before
does.
spring break. Yes.
Yes. So they don't understand that whole process of it. And so it really, behooves the classroom teacher to be able to demonstrate really what the science of reading really is all about. So
Yes.
I actually love that. Now let's pivot to your status as a Black male educator. Have you faced or come across any challenges or barriers in your experience through your educational journey as a Black male educator?
Yeah, I think something that I don't know if I was completely ready for was, again, I'm came from a HBCU where it's all like black people that are excited about wanting to change the world. It's all like 18 to 22 year olds that like truly believe like we can do all the things. And I believe we can. I think that, and I've mostly taught in school, I've exclusively worked in schools that are majority black and brown students. Um, and at the same time, I don't think I was quite ready for this idea of, not this idea, this like reality of how isolating and how just at times I'll just say like lonely it can be when you are like the one of the few, or sometimes the only like black male educator in your school. And oftentimes, like when I taught third grade, I was the only one like on my hallway. When I came to where I'm at now, I was the oftentimes when I would sit in like instructional coaching development spaces or assistant principal development spaces, I was like one of two that were across our network. And I think sometimes it when you find your people and like you gravitate to it. I think a barrier for me has often in coupling this idea of like it can feel really isolating. Also, still figuring out how I want to show up in a space that is like mostly women. Um, and so like navigating like I don't want to overstep, but I also like need to get my point across, but I don't want to, this little dance that we often like have to we often like have to play. And I would love to say that I have it figured out, and I'd love to say that I have all the answers. I'm still learning, and I think that's okay. But I think a barrier, if I were to like talk to another like 18, 19-year old that's going to college, that is like a black man, and that is gung ho and like really interested about going into education, especially if you want to like come over here and come to elementary with me because it's really fun. I would say be prepared to like be the one or the only, and that's okay. Find there are conferences, there are like professional organizations that are built around wanting to sustain and support black male educators. And I'm really proud that I found that like around my first or second year teaching, because it in the day to day, if I was feeling like really like alone and by myself, I can tap into like this really cool group of guys that is also going through some similar things, and we can like build and sustain each other up. Um, and I thought that was like really cool to see that there were organizations like the Black Male Educators Convening, like Profound Gentlemen, that are really geared towards wanting to call me Mister, and like all these other really cool organizations that are built around like we want to see more Black men in education. So let's band together and let's like support and sustain each other. That's what I would say to someone that's going through something similar.
I love that because I was actually going to mention organizations such as Call Me Mr. Black Men Teach, like all of these wonderful, uplifting organizations that's trying to get our Black men in education. And so many at this point, like you, didn't actually start in education
Mhm.
and are coming from various industries, right? And so I think that's an amazing way to be introduced to education that may not have been your first start.
Mhm.
So, recruiting efforts, what do you think it will take to get more Black men in
Yeah.
education?
Yeah, for sure. I'm currently writing a conference paper about this right now, and I think that there's a lot of variables to. We can think about it from like a school district, school like organizational standpoint, like how like HR, like where you're going to, what college campuses are you recruiting from. We can also think about it from a like college, university, like education department standpoint, like what scholarships are you making available? How are you supporting students to and through like the licensure process, because like that's a really huge barrier. We can also think about it from like the K-12 before they get out into the world. How are we For me, like somebody that I respect had to like point to me and say, "Hey, you right here. you have the qualities that would make you a phenomenal teacher, that make you really successful in education. Have you thought about it? So I think we can also think about it from like on the high school standpoint. What qualities are school districts looking for in teachers that you can like directly point at in the kids that you are in front of every single day? Um, and I think what it'll take in order to get on the recruiting standpoint, on the also like once we get them in the door, like we'll have to make sure that they don't leave in a year. So there's a lot of variables. My mind is like always going to like we got to pay people more. We got to pay people like what they're worth because if we think about comparatively other, other career paths that require a certain amount of like certification that might require you to get a master's also come with a reasonable with a reasonable salary. And so I think we have to get really intentional around like how we're paying teachers. And also we have to think about where are we going in order to like how can school districts position themselves to like find other black men that might want to teach. That might mean to ensuring that you are going to like the HBCU that's in your city. That might mean you have to go to or even like go farther out and think about where can we find these guys. And also on the school districts end, I think it's also thinking about like what pathways can we make available to like college, not college, the what pathways can we make available to like high school sophomores, juniors, seniors to like get them a couple like very small at bats and how it feels to just like be in a classroom, whether that's through like some type of incubated like internship experience where maybe 2 days a week you're going down to the feeder elementary school and helping Miss Johnson read to her kindergarten class. I don't know. But I think it's thinking about what are the things that we have the most control over and how can we use those to very like intentionally plant little seeds in potential black male candidates.
I love that because I really, really believe that we as school districts don't do enough to
Mhm.
shine our profession in front of the school, in front of the students that we teach.
Yep.
I've often said that every school in America, at least elementary, has career day.
Mhm.
And do we put a shine on education? We don't. And so, but
No,
we also have to understand how we're showing up in
yeah,
front of students as well, because sometimes that really deters them from the profession. So it's a lot of variables, as you mentioned.
yeah. I think I really appreciate how you named like how we show up, just like in front of kids. I was at this I was at this fundraising event over this past weekend, and I got to talk about very similar to what we're doing now, like my kind of career trajectory. And someone just very plainly asked, like, "Oh, do you like it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love it. It's so fun. It's da 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 da." And she had a like she paused and she was like, "I've never heard someone
Wow.
express that clearly, like they still like it."
Yes.
And I think, and then she is a hedge fund person. She's got much more money than I do, but the way in which that we just even talk about the profession, like talk about, I have
Absolutely.
to like check myself sometimes. Um, but I think that also has such a big impact on the different like candidates that we're bringing in, also just on how the general public views education and teaching.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would say probably in the last decade, perhaps, known for assistant principals to really get the coaching and the mentoring that they need should
Mhm.
they aspire to the principalship. I mean, to the principalship, and also just making them a better administrator, right?
Yeah.
I know there's so many organizations now that support the work of really coaching and mentoring and getting assistant principals ready, which is why I even started my movement Next in Line to Lead, because I really felt that we have to prepare the bench um,
Yeah.
in order to have assistant principals ready to take the helm. And that starts on day one as a year one assistant principal.
It does.
It really does. And so, with that, have you found, and I know it's only been a few months now that you've been sitting in that seat, but
Mhm.
have you found that you've received the coaching and the mentoring that's necessary as a first year assistant principal?
Yeah, yeah. And I think I probably should have started this. I've only worked in charter schools, and I think that charter schools have a very high touch point with every single person. And so, in the way where I I like coach and develop teachers. I think from day one, even just coming in as an instructional coach into now, my direct manager and manager ladder has been very clear around like we want to coach you and develop you to the point where you can one day become a principal. And I feel really grateful for that. It can be a lot. It can be a lot sometimes. It can be a lot. But I think that from as assistant principal, the majority of our work is around like moving kids, improving teacher practice, improving data, and being like really good instructional leaders, which I think is exactly what you should be doing. And I think there's also like an organizational development piece that also assistant principals need should they like want to assume the principalship one day. Drop my phone. It's fine. Um, and so I think, yeah, I get a lot of coaching around like instructional development, around like how to move the needle with kids and with data, with teachers. And I think that sometimes like in order to show that you're ready for the next step, you also like have to get really good at where you are. And so I think like for assistant principals, you have to be able to move kids, you have to be able to show that here's what I like, here are the variables that I was given this year, and here's how I moved, and here's what practices I did to in order to do that. And I think that at the same time, not separately, we also have to develop them as like good organizational leaders too. So what does it mean to write a full professional development and then also like seek feedback from teachers and staff? What does it mean to write a like construct a system and then like to see it from idea into like rolling it out to a staff? What does it mean to sit in on an expulsion hearing and look at like the variables that led to this student for this situation potentially being remanded from a building? I think that we have to I think we have to see assistant principals as the thing that they like want to be if they want to like assume principalship. And then I think through what are like the small at bats, what are the small like principal moments, if you will, that we can like give them a little taste at to see like, hey, here's here's something that I do as principal. Join this conversation with me. Let's debrief it afterwards. I felt really fortunate that I've had that from my principal this year. She's very high touch. She's very hands on, and I want that for other people too.
I love it. I love it. Now, looking ahead at your research, what impact do you hope that your research on literacy will have on the field of education?
I think that when I was in my master's program, and I've been very heavy on like wanting to research like black male teachers and their impact. I think that there's a large amount of research that frames black male teachers as really strong like role models, really strong like cultural gatekeepers. We know that research says that black male teach like not just black students, but like all students improve from having black male teachers like in the classroom. Um, and I think that's great. And I think it is more often framed as like, hey, they're really cool. They do really good at school culture. They're really cool at being like cultural identity markers for students. They're really cool at being role models. And I think that's cool. I think there's like a really big missing piece from the research is like black male teachers as like academic and like instructional leaders too. And so part of my research really wants to frame black male teachers not only as these really great role models, not only as these really great like cultural like identity markers for black boys, not only as these really great possibility models for like going to college and like professionalism, but also they can move data and they can improve like students' learning outcomes too. And while like navigating both spaces, because both spaces are important. And I think that's one way I want it to impact. I think another one is also thinking through a lot of framing around just black students and literacy often frames like black boys as like underperforming, often frames black boys as like they typically underperform on like literacy exams. They are like kind of the lowest subgroup of students underneath like kind of toe and toe with students with disabilities that perform the least and on like foundational literacy things. And so I want to get really clear around if this is true, then that's like a gap in instruction. That's a gap in the curriculum. That's a gap in like a culture responsive piece that it sounds like a lot of literature is we're kind of talking around this thing. So let's name it head on. Um, I want to dive into how do black boys experience literacy instruction? Like what is it like to be a black boy, potentially from a socioeconomically disadvantaged background that experiences a public K-12 like literacy classroom, what are the practices that are most apt for them to perform well? And also like how do they respond to science of reading, which we understand is kind of this like new kid on the block that is like getting a lot of praise and getting a lot of press right now, because of the like positive like outcomes that it has for students. So how does it feel? What does it look like, both like academically, data wise, for to be a Black boy that's in a classroom that is using science of reading that is also led by a Black male teacher? I think right now I'm working on like a lit review. The two groups they're never quite like talked about together. They kind of talked about here's how Black students experience literacy instruction. Oh my gosh, Black male teachers are so cool. I want them to like be merged together because I think like that causal relationship has really like heavy impacts for kind of how we were talking about earlier, for school districts, for like teacher preparation programs, for even the ways in which we recruit Black male teachers, because there is a, and I've been on the negative end of this. I think when we recruit Black male teachers and we assume they're going to come in and kind of like clean house and you're going to be the disciplinarian and you're going to be like all these things, that is like a level of like unpaid emotional labor that we are assuming that this, for me, assuming that this like 22-year-old kid that has not even figured out how to be quite a good teacher yet is going to come in and like fix all your behavior problems. That's like unpaid labor that adds to like teacher burnout. And so I want the research that I do to frame Black male teachers not only as like really cool like cultural models for kids, but also here's someone that has a potential like with the correct like training and support to be a really fire like academic leader as well.
I love it. I can't wait till you finish your research. I can't wait to dive into it and really look and find out what your outcomes are, what your findings are.
Thank
This
you.
has been an absolutely amazing
Had a
conversation.
great time.
How can the listeners and viewers, how can they follow you and just connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. I am Jonathan Pulliam, Jonathon. The second on all platforms. So Instagram and LinkedIn is where I tend to spend most of my time. So you can definitely find me there. If ever you want to like nerd out around like literacy data, let's hop on a Zoom call. I'm totally happy to do that.
I love it. Thank you again for being my guest.
Thank you.
And listeners and viewers, I want to thank you as well. Thank you for joining another episode of Champions of Change podcast. This is where we celebrate the powerful voices and impactful work of Black male educators, making a difference in our classrooms and in our schools. Their dedication not only shapes young minds, but it also inspires entire communities. If my guest journey in education moved you today, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share this episode with others who need to hear it. Let's keep uplifting these champions and supporting the change they are leading in education. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep championing change. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining the Champions of Change podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join us for a new episode every Tuesday, wherever you listen to your podcast.